From Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Saamiyah Syed. Our top story tonight. Several U.S. government websites have been attacked by global ransomware. News reports show the worldwide hack on Thursday exploited a vulnerability in widely used software. The ransomware targeted the MoveIt application, which is used by the U.S. government to encrypt and transfer sensitive files. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency is assisting federal agencies that were attacked. The perpetrator has not yet been publicly named. Earlier, a Russian-language group Klop claimed responsibility for the attacks. They were on oil company Shell, the BBC, British Airways, and the websites of Illinois and Minnesota state governments, among others. Klop asked victims to pay a ransom or threatened to post their personal information on the dark web. Experts told CNN that Klop could be behind the first wave of attacks on MoveIt, but other groups and individuals may have launched further attacks as well. For years, there was a belief that human trafficking only affected women. But the 2023 Trafficking in Persons report has found that young men and boys are among the many victims illegally smuggled across borders. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Thursday the trafficking aspect involved men is usually overlooked. He added that this perception has devastating and tangible consequences as male victims typically have far fewer support services available to them. Blinken said trafficking of young men and boys has increased fivefold between 2004 and 2020. The State Department report notes the coronavirus pandemic has led to a significant increase in forced labor. Blinken said an approach that includes law enforcement, victim assistance, and pressure on governments to crack down on the criminal enterprise is necessary. The United States has announced $920 million in additional humanitarian aid for Syria. On Thursday, U.S. Undersecretary for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights, Usra Zeya, made the announcement at a conference in Brussels. The new aid makes the total U.S. assistance to Syria now at $1.1 billion in 2023. Over the past 12 years, the U.S. has spent over $16 billion to provide humanitarian assistance to affected people in Syria. Since 2011, Syria has been embroiled in a civil war as the government of Bashar al-Assad has engaged in a brutal suppression of dissent against pro-democracy advocates. This new injection of funds by the U.S. comes against a backdrop of record-high humanitarian needs after devastating earthquakes that hit parts of Syria in February. Zeya reaffirmed the importance of continuing humanitarian access to all parts of Syria. She urged the UN Security Council to reauthorize UN cross-border aid into Syria. The authorization will end in July. Fox News has caused outrage by comments made about President Joe Biden after ex-President Donald Trump's trial. Hours after Trump stood trial in Miami, the right-leaning broadcaster published a piece calling Biden a wannabe dictator who tried to have his political rival arrested. It also referred to Trump, who had just been indicted, as the president of the nation. Following uproar, the TV network said it had addressed the situation but did not offer any explanation. The station did not provide details as to why Biden was referred to as a wannabe dictator or why Trump was referred to as president. Unlike rivals CNN and MSNBC, Fox reported Trump's remarks live and without interruption. The network accused Biden of weaponizing the Justice Department to take out his political rival. Trump, the Republican frontrunner for the presidential nomination in 2024, has been indicted on more than 30 counts. This is in connection with his handling of classified documents after leaving the White House. He was arraigned Tuesday in a federal court in Miami. Nusrat Jahan Choudhury has been confirmed as the first Muslim female federal judge in the United States. She is also the first Bangladeshi American to be appointed as a lifetime federal judge. The Senate confirmed the civil rights attorney on Thursday by a vote of 50 to 49. She will serve as a federal judge in Brooklyn in the Eastern District of New York. In 2021, the Senate confirmed the first Muslim lifetime federal judge, Syed Qureshi. He serves on the U.S. District Court for the District of New Jersey. Choudhury is a well-known civil liberties attorney who has spent her entire legal career with the American Civil Liberties Union and its affiliates. Previously, she worked at the Racial Justice Program and the National Security Project at ACLU. Republican members of the Senate Judiciary Committee had requested a rehearing for Choudhury. They said she had given conflicted answers to questions about whether she had given testimony that police killings of unarmed Black men occurred daily in the United States. Chairman Dick Durbin denied the request and advanced her nomination. Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat, voted against Choudhury's confirmation. He said Wednesday that her past statements call into question her ability to be impartial. Choudhury is the third Biden-nominated judge Manchin has voted against. Choudhury's father, a native of Bangladesh, had received a Fulbright scholarship to come to the U.S. He worked as a doctor in the Chicago area for 40 years. Choudhury graduated from Columbia University, later earned a master's degree from Princeton, and then earned her law degree from Yale. She succeeds Judge Joseph Bianco, who was nominated by George W. Bush and appointed to the Second Circuit by Trump administration in 2019. More on how American Muslims are calling for a Muslim Heritage Month comes with details after the break, so stay tuned and we will be right back. Muslim groups in the U.S. are launching a campaign next week calling for federal recognition of a Muslim American Heritage Month. The idea is to recognize the achievements of Muslims living in the United States. Last year, Senator Cory Booker introduced a resolution to recognize July as Muslim Americans' Contribution Month in various sectors of society. In 2021, Representative Karen Bass also introduced a similar resolution. Muslim groups argue that while their religion is often associated with Arab Americans, they are much more diverse. Black Americans and Asian Americans make up a large portion of the community. According to the Pew Research Center, between 5 and 4 million Muslims live in the United States. The number of mosques has grown from 1,200 to more than 2,700 in the 2 decades between 2000 and 2020. Robert McCaw, Director of Government Affairs at the Council on American Islamic Relations, says the U.S. has recognized minority communities and their achievements and impact on society. He said the average American views Muslim Americans as new immigrants. They do not know that Muslims have served in every war since the Revolutionary War. Hamtramck, Michigan has banned the display of LGBTQ flags on public properties. The city council is made up of a majority of Muslims. The council ultimately voted unanimously to display only 5 flags, including the American flag, the Michigan flag, and a flag representing immigrants' home countries. The issue of displaying the pride flag became a campaign issue when current Mayor Amer Ghalib ran against then-Mayor Karen Majewski in 2021. During the meeting, a woman with a clown nose took the stage and mocked the city council and the city's majority Muslim population. To further emphasize her point, she kissed another woman standing next to her. The woman expressed her belief that while discrimination against LGBTQ individuals is illegal in the U.S., the city of Hamtramck still refuses to accept the community. Council members defended the ban, arguing that the pride flag clashes with the beliefs of some members of their faith. However, they clarified that businesses and residents are not prohibited from flying the flag on their property. Naeem Choudhury, a member of the city council, felt that LGBTQ individuals were already represented and questioned the need to display the flag on government property. He stressed the importance of respecting the religious rights of the city's citizens. More than 40% of Hamtramck's residents are of Yemeni and Bangladeshi origin. In 2015, the city became the first in the US to have a majority Muslim population. Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to relocate Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan militants to western Afghanistan. Citing a senior Pakistani security official, Turkey's Anadolu agency reports that the two countries have agreed on the plan. Pakistan will provide funding for the resettlement. Pakistani Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mumtaz Zahra Baloch declined to comment on the report. However, she said her country was cooperating with the Afghan interim government in the fight against terrorism. She said Islamabad looked forward to working closely with the Afghan side to combat the terrorist threat. The TTP has carried out attacks against civilians and security forces in Pakistan. This has become a serious issue between the two countries. Pakistan is not convinced that the interim Taliban government has fulfilled its promise to prevent terrorist attacks from its territory. Pakistan and the TTP have reached various ceasefire agreements since 2007. However, they were short-lived as both sides accused each other of violating the agreements. Since the Taliban took control of Afghanistan in August 2021, TTP attacks on Pakistan have increased. In the first 4 months of 2023, the Pakistan Army recorded 436 terrorist attacks that killed 293 people, including 137 security personnel. The Palestinian Authority is accusing Israel of plunging the Middle East into violence. In a statement on Thursday, PA spokesman Nabil Abu Radene said the Israeli occupation government insists on plunging the region into escalation. He said the spiral of violence in Palestine continues. The Palestinian spokesman called for holding Israel accountable for its violations against Palestinians. He also appealed to the US government to break its silence and stop Israel from committing daily crimes and abuses against the Palestinian people. Tensions in the occupied West Bank have escalated in recent months with repeated Israeli raids on Palestinian towns. According to Palestinian figures, 161 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since the beginning of this year. At least 21 Israelis were killed in separate attacks during the same period. On Thursday, Israeli soldiers demolished a house belonging to a family of a Palestinian prisoner accused by Tel Aviv of carrying out an attack last October that killed a soldier. A young Palestinian was also killed and 6 others wounded early Thursday in a raid by the Israeli military in the West Bank city of Nablus. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says social media is becoming a loudspeaker for hate. Speaking at a UN Security Council meeting on Wednesday, he said social media is providing a stage for hate preachers. Guterres pointed out that unsubstantiated claims or outright lies can quickly gain unwarranted legitimacy when presented alongside verified facts and scientific evidence. They are often adopted and even promoted by political leaders. The meeting was chaired by the United Arab Emirates. Guterres also said that every faith evokes in imperatives of human brotherhood, mutual respect, and understanding. He stressed that maintaining peace and preventing wars is the raison d'être of the Security Council. Guterres said threats to peace can take many forms. He said violent misogyny, anti-Muslim hatred, virulent anti-Semitism, and attacks on Christian minority communities are being reported from around the world. Hearings on a case related to the genocide of the Rohingya by Burma ended Tuesday in a federal court in Buenos Aires, Argentina. The court had agreed to hear the case under the principle of universal jurisdiction. It was presented with a detailed account of the genocide committed by Burma's armed forces against the Rohingya Muslim minority. The complaint described atrocities, gang rapes, stabbings, and the killing of children, as well as the burning of people alive. Tun Kin, head of the London-based Burmese Rohingya organization, filed the lawsuit. The case is about abuses committed in Burma between 2012 and 2018. The lawsuit was filed against military junta leader Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, radical Buddhist cleric Ashin Wirthu, and ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. According to the criminal complaint, Burma's government incited hatred against the Rohingya in 2012 to appease the country's Buddhist majority. The Rohingya, who had been subjected to various forms of discrimination for decades, was an easy target. For the first time, Rohingya witnesses were personally questioned about the case. For security reasons, the case was heard behind closed doors. Rape and other forms of sexual violence were perpetrated on a large scale. People were shot indiscriminately by soldiers, and others were burned to death in their homes. Sometimes as many as 40 women and girls were raped or gang raped, often in public or in front of their families. In 2019, the International Criminal Court began investigating attacks on Rohingya, but found its scope limited as Burma is not a member of its body. In November 2020, the Gambia filed a case with the UN's highest court, the International Court of Justice, seeking Burma's responsibility as a state for the genocide of the Rohingya. After the capture of Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, by Chinese troops in 1959, many inhabitants, including the spiritual leader Dalai Lama, had to flee to India. The Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile are currently based in Dharamshala, a city in India's northern state of Himachal Pradesh. Hundreds of miles from Dharamshala, however, a Tibetan community lives and thrives in Srinagar, the capital of Muslim-majority Indian-administered Kashmir. Nearly 1,500 Tibetan families live in the region and have preserved their culture and traditions. They have restaurants that serve Tibetan dishes and a Tibetan public school to connect their children to their language and culture. Both regions, Kashmir and Tibet, maintained centuries-old relations until the borders became strict in the 20th century. According to historians, Kashmiri traders and artisans traveled to Tibet in search of wool for their shawls and carpets. Many of them stayed there and married Tibetan women. Since most Tibetans are now settled in Srinagar near the 18th century Hariparbat fort, it has become a thriving neighborhood of Tibetan restaurants. Not only are there eating joints here, but there are also embroidery stores where women sew, weave, and sell suits. Many of them have now learned the customs and language of the Kashmiris. And that's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.